Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Uncorked with Funny Wine Girl. This is Funny Wine Girl, aka Janine Luby. I want to say, and I don't know, sometimes people put out like a trigger warning. So I'm going to say something just for people listening. We are going to talk a little bit this week about sexual assault. So if that is something that could, trigger you or bother you, I just want to give you the heads up on that. I also want to say, because I do this every week, how I get connected with my guests, because I'm a big fan of getting out in the community, meeting people, staying connected. Maybe you get somebody's business card and you're like, I don't need a roofer right now, or I don't need this or that. You never know how you can help one another later in life. And I do think that is so important. People need people at the, even though as crazy as things are in the world right now, we do need each other. And I think it's great to just get out there, learn from people, help them when you can, and they will come around and help you as well. So what happened for this week, how I came about the folks I've got on today, I had Shira Bernard on last year. She's a really clever young woman who created this device to keep drinks safe from drink spiking. And I always like to do a little something around August when people head back to school. That is what's called the red zone. It's the time when most sexual assaults occur in college on colleges campuses from like August through like about Thanksgiving. And so this year I kind of edited. I had a part of one conversation from a woman who does self-defense, and I included a snippet of Shira's commentary about drink spiking. And she came out with a documentary called When Is It Enough? And it was all about, it was a really good documentary. It's free on YouTube right now. It was about women's experiences who had their drinks spiked. And in one case, the poor young woman passed away from it. But again, and it's similar to what we'll talk about today, these young women were not really believed. They were blamed. In some hospitals, they wouldn't even test for the date rape drug. So that led me to I was searching online for her documentary, and it led me to another incredible documentary called Loud Enough: Surviving Justice. And I saw it and I said, wow, I want to, talk to the director of this. This sounds like an amazing story that I need to share on the podcast. And once again, I tell people, if you want to connect with people, don't be afraid, because the old me, the scared me in my 20s and 30s wouldn't have done it. But now I'm like, you know what? I'm going to reach out to Hilary and see if she'll answer me back. Sure enough, Hilary did. Hilary Klotz Steinman is the woman who directed that film. And she put me in touch with my other guests today. She said, you really have to meet these wonderful people who are featured in the documentary. So, Madi Smith and her mother, Mandy Smith. And Maddie, it's Maddie's story that is really featured in the documentary. And then Mandy, her mom, who is so supportive. And you could see her story in the documentary. So, I want to welcome Hilary, Mandy, and Maddie tonight. Thank you for so much for taking the time and for sharing your time with me.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for
Absolutely.
having us.
Oh, it's, what I've got my, this is my favorite mug, and I think it's appropriate for tonight because, I'm dealing with some really strong badass women. I love this mug. I will use it until there's nothing left on it. But I want to start off because mostly I'm going to focus my conversation on Maddie, whose story it is, and her mom, Mandy. But Hilary, you were the one who kind of discovered this, and you said, I want to do a documentary on this. And so I just want to give you the opportunity to kind of set this up for us. And then I do want to, spend most of the time talking to Mandy and Maddie.
Well, I was reading the Washington Post and I came across Madison's story, and it really focused on not only the assault, but what Madison was doing to try to get justice in terms of finding a very arcane, unique sort of 1880s Wild West sort of loophole in the criminal justice system where an ordinary person can convene a grand jury to try to get justice. And in Madison's case, where she had been the victim and the survivor of a terrible sexual assault and rape, where she feared for her life. And yet, despite all the evidence, despite doing all the things which you need to do when you're the victim of a crime and which are expected of sexual assault survivors, she told people immediately. She reported it to the police. She went to the hospital and had a rape kit done. There was evidence. It's documented in photos. Despite doing all of this and going through all those really difficult steps, still the prosecutor declined to press charges. And, most people would give up at that point. And after suffering such a difficult traumatic experience and then being sort of re-traumatized again by the criminal justice system, I was so struck not only by how brave Madison was to go ahead and not just share her story with her friends and her family, but to with the police and then with the general public in terms of an article in, a national newspaper like the Washington Post. And it struck a chord with me because I had experienced a sexual assault at the exact same age and, didn't tell a soul, not even my closest friends, and very much lived for decades blaming myself and with a lot of shame. And so I was really inspired by what Madison was doing and by what Maddie and Mandy together as mother and daughter were doing, and also with Maddie's father, Jason. Because I'm, at the time that we started, developing this film, I had a daughter the same age. I have a daughter the same age as Madison, and so the same age that Madison was when she was assaulted. And so it really, again, hit home doubly hard that I didn't want my daughter to have to experience this, but also I didn't want my daughter, if she did experience something, to go through it alone. So I was really excited to reach out to Madison and Mandy and to get to know them and to have the privilege and honor of being able to share their story.
Yeah. And I watched it. It is incredibly powerful. So I know that, Hilary, you picking up this story and then, Maddie, you being willing to share it, and Mandy, it's, obviously it's going to make an impact, and I think it's going to provide hope and empower women. And we need more of these stories shared so that women don't feel alone or that they don't feel scared. And I do think the tide is turning a little bit. I recorded with Hilary and Justin and Julie, and I said, I'm a Gen Xer, but even, the farther back you go with each generation, we were less powerful or strong, or felt that we had to just go along. I mean, I was raised Catholic, and I will say I was fortunate. I was lucky that nothing did happen, but I was the type that I would have been meek and just go, okay, that's authority, that's power. And I wouldn't have probably spoken up because we weren't really taught to stand up for ourselves. So I'm so glad that that is changing. And I'm so glad that women like you are leading it. So, Maddie, let me ask you then, and thank you, Hilary, for sharing that. I don't even know exactly where to begin, because watching it, there were so many powerful moments of it. But I do want to say to you, how did you find the strength? I mean, you certainly were watching this. I could see the frustration. I loved it. There was a moment where you said that you don't hate, but you were feeling kind of like a sense of hatred for what was happening. And a couple of the folks who were not really helping you, when you kept hitting like all these barriers, how were you able to move forward and to really stand up for yourself?
To move forward, I think it was honestly a lot of my family. I'm very blessed with the support I've received from them because a lot of women don't receive that, or victims or survivors, however you want to put it. They don't receive that kind of support from their family and their friends. There's a lot of shame behind it and stigma from society as a whole. And like you said, I do think we're moving the needle on that a little bit. But I think what really helped my case is the fact that my dad was a police officer my whole childhood, so he kind of had an idea of what should be happening legally, and he was like, "This isn't right. What's happening is not okay." So having that perspective helped just kind of guide us in the fact that we know that something wasn't right with how everything was being dealt with legally and how I was being dismissed continuously by the county attorney. So I think having not only that viewpoint from my dad, but also just having such a supportive family, I felt so loved in a time where I felt unlovable, and I just know I wouldn't be here without my family.
And that is so important, because not every woman has that, or not every person has that. And I should say, just for folks listening, so that they do kind of understand what we are talking about, you were in college, right?
Yeah.
And you were friends with this person, and at first it was consensual. You were interested, in, like we could say it started maybe as romantic, but it quickly turned into something that you did not want. it became violent, and so then it was sexual assault, it was rape. And I was watching the documentary, they called it immature sex, and they were really not really believing you and really not taking the steps that needed to happen. Was that Let me ask you about, your father was a cop. Was it hard for him to see that, like, well, wait a minute, I'm part of the good guys, we're supposed to protect, but you weren't really being protected?
It was extremely difficult for my dad to kind of take the back seat in this situation, and he wasn't an officer at the time this occurred, but he had been for 20 plus years prior to
Mm,
this. But it was very difficult for him to have to take a back seat and just kind of let things happen because he didn't really get a say. None of us really did until we found the grand jury statute and we took the power back. But with him not being able to help legally in this situation, I think was very, very difficult for him. But also the fact that he had cases that he would answer from Bethany College and would continuously be met with nothing being done after the fact. But he didn't know that at the time. Like, it would be somebody would, like, a mom would call the station and he would have no idea that anything had happened. Like, what's the college doing? It was so unreported. But when
mhm.
he did report them, he thought things were being done the right way. There wasn't a whole lot of chance for him to really see everything from beginning to end, especially if nothing is getting prosecuted. So he had no idea it was this bad. I don't think any of us had. And I think
Yeah.
that it really truly is this horrible that that rape just gets dismissed all the time.
And Mandy, I want to talk to you for a moment. Melanie, you're Maddie's mom. You are clearly, you could tell where Maddie, she's her own woman, but clearly you're a badass, I'm going to say. And you could see that in the documentary. Like, you were like, oh no, I'm not having this. That was like, you were going to
Yeah.
fight this fight. But you said a lot of powerful things too, that it broke you. How is it as a mom? Because I mean, it didn't happen to you, but it kind of did, because I know mama bear, instinct. How is
Right.
that for you to keep the strength, to keep your shit together, but yet also you had to be soft, but also tough?
That was a whole mixed bag of emotions that I was navigating at the time. And I think reflecting now on that period in our lives, I didn't realize at the time how intense all of those different emotions were coming into play.
Mm,
If I knew then what I know now, I think I probably would have been a complete wreck, but at that point, I knew just enough that what they were doing was wrong. I just didn't really know why or how to articulate it. And I found myself running back and forth between, our friends who are in law enforcement, our friend who's an attorney, our friend who's, a prosecutor in another county, our, a family member who's in law, and just really validating what I thought to be appropriate or equal accountability was valid and right. And, they would all assure me that, yes, you're right about this. And I just didn't understand that people get put in these positions of power that they don't necessarily have any business being in at that time.
mm, mhm.
And I likely wouldn't have kept it together as well as I did. And there were days I didn't keep it together well at all. But I think just knowing that there's so many people out there that don't have somebody that believes them or have family to navigate hard stuff with them. I didn't understand that until this had happened to my daughter. I just responded to her in a way that I thought was the right thing to do. And I think just knowing that I couldn't react on a lot of things I wanted to react on because I had to be strong for her. And I couldn't say, let her see me losing it because I wanted to protect her.
Yeah. Yeah. So you knew as a mom, you were like, okay, I got to hold it together here, but that was difficult. Yeah. And I want, again, for the listener, so next week you'll hear from, I have another conversation with Hilary and Justin Boardman, who was so helpful with your family, and Julie German, who was a former prosecutor. So they get into really more of the legal system and all that. But I do want, so I want to touch upon that a little bit. You mentioned, and we talked about this will be really featured next week, this loophole that was in the law that really kind of allows an individual citizen to bring their own grand jury, I guess you could say, even because they weren't doing it. The legal system wasn't. But you had to go out there and you had to, and this I found really moving in the documentary too, that you kind of had to tell your story to everybody to get them to sign this petition. And then it was rejected because there was another little loophole with, I guess, Mandy, you had to have your name on all of these sheets, and then you had to go do it again. How hard was that for you, Maddie, to be like, you're being vulnerable but strong and transparent and telling, here's why I need your signature? How hard was that to do for all of those signatures?
It is one of the hardest things I've ever done because it was hard to tell my family, first of all, and then I had to tell it to 100 plus. I mean, we had to collect over 300.
Yeah, I was just trying to remember. I think it was 326
or something like that. So strangers times two, because the petition initially got denied on a technicality that my mom, who was the official filer of the petition, didn't sign each page. And I actually got not a lot, but I did get some comments like, well, why is your mom the one filing it if it's your story? I was in school at the time still, and I was really trying to focus on my studies because and I was still up on the campus that I was raped at. So, I mean, that still played a factor into my emotions when I was on campus. So, really being able to fully focus on school while she held all of the logistics of the petition helped a lot. Um, but it was really one of the hardest things I've ever done, having to tell strangers. And I mean, we held petition drives, two of them, in pretty public places, one during an event in the county and one just kind of on our own. And a lot of people showed up and they were very supportive, which I was so thankful for. And there were a lot of people, if I would just say, yeah, I'm Maddie Smith. I was raped on the college campus. I was raped on Bethany College campus, and the county attorney isn't doing anything. Here's what I'm doing. It, I wouldn't even get that far, and they'd be like, say no more, let me sign. So that was really encouraging. But there were a few people who wanted to hear the whole story, and that's fine. That's what I was there to do. But what kept me going is the fact that if I don't keep pushing, we don't make changes. I am lucky enough that I do have the support system that I do that made that process a little bit easier. Granted, it was still very difficult to do and just kind of wrap your head around. I do think that I probably went numb during the petition drives because it was just kind of like robot repeating it in a sense. But, I mean, we ended up doing the thing. We did the damn thing. So.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and maybe it was even better. I'm no psychologist, but to be numb, because instead of letting yourself get, and emotionally, losing that energy every single time, I can't imagine that would be so hard, I would think.
And
Yeah.
to make it even harder, it was during COVID.
Mm.
So our petition drives were a BYOP, bring your own pen. And we were masked up. It was
so
really
funny.
ridiculous. But it worked. It was over the top. Like, we had a ladder with balloons and streamers that had no rhyme or reason. We can thank Justin for that. But it got people's attention. Hey, what's going on here?
Yeah. Yeah. Were you surprised? And then I want to ask you a question, Mandy, but were you surprised, Maddie, by like the reaction, or did you find yourself having to educate people, or did they not, or were they just like, okay, I'll sign it and be on my way, about like how broken our system, I'll say broken, our system is, or how it isn't really on the side of someone like you?
I'm more surprised that people were more immediate to sign, but it didn't seem like they were, let me just sign this and be on my way. Was, I'm so sorry this happened.
Mm.
This shouldn't be how this is handled. And I mean, I had comments like, I mean, I've got a 4-year-old daughter, I've got a 14-year-old daughter, I mean, I've got a 30-year-old daughter. I can't imagine this. So, um, I would say the most surprising thing was just the amount of support, and still a conversation after that didn't necessarily feel like I was educating, but more just bringing awareness to the systemic issue that people like us didn't know was there until this happened.
Mm. That's actually, it's good to hear that there's empathy out there and that you were coming across it, because that's hopeful, right? In this world, it's nice to hear that they were responding in that way. So Mandy, you really kind of, Justin was a big part of helping you with this. I know, like I said, we have a conversation with Justin and Julie next week, but you were listening, I think, to a podcast, right? And you heard Justin, and you just reached out again, like my reference to reaching out to Hilary. I think this is so important that people are reminded, reach out to people, because you don't know. They could be like, yeah, I'll answer this person. You messaged him, I want to say on Facebook, and he got back to you, and he was incredible part of your lives, helping to the point where I understand he now lives in that town, right?
Correct.
He's fun Uncle Justin now.
Yes, he's become family.
That's incredible.
It's quite wild. Yeah, when you, at the beginning of the podcast, when you said, 20, 30-year old you would not have reached out to Hilary, you would have been too reserved and too shy. I totally related to that. I just heard that podcast, and in the moment, I was like, I'm going to send this guy a message. The worst thing he can do is never respond or never read it. I don't think I had any idea of what the best case scenario would have looked like. I think that this is a really great scenario where we've taken it to, best case would be that there's accountability in the justice system and in society and all those things. And I think there's still so far to go on that. But the way that he responded made me feel like there was somebody outside of that group I was talking about, my family, my friends, my husband, that maybe they have to tell me, yeah, I'm right, because they love me. This guy doesn't know me from the man on the moon. He doesn't have to say, oh my gosh, this is horrific. And just to have it validated from somebody else outside kind of really tamed down and simmered down some of the gaslighting that was happening from the county attorney, if we're quite frank about what he was doing. And I don't know, never be afraid to take the risk. Just do the thing. You just never know. I know that me taking that step to reach out to Justin and the work that we've all done and the reason we're here together has helped so many more people other than Maddie. The support she had, the message I sent, the team that we made helped Madison become a survivor and not be a victim of what happened. So many people go have a meeting with these people in these positions of power that really don't know quite what they're talking about or have the proper empathy or whatever words you want to use here. And they are causing, secondary victimization to the point that people will never recover. And I remember so clearly who she was when we walked out of his office that day. And if we wouldn't have sent those messages and she wouldn't have had the support and we wouldn't have had the people in our lives, she wouldn't be who she is today. And I'm certain of that.
Yeah. And I want to say for listeners, I'll do this little dangle. You'll have to listen to next week's episode, but basically Justin is someone who was also law enforcement. And now, you'll hear more of that next week, what he's doing to help, because basically they were taught the wrong way. They were doing things the wrong way, where I loved we talked about this in his conversation when he said about the bank, using that really great example of, you never go into a bank robbery and say, well, what did you expect? You had all this money laying around, but yet women who are, survivors of sexual assault or rape, you're kind of asking them, well, what, was it dark? What were you wearing? Were you drinking? Did you go to his room? Why did you go to his room? Like all these things that really you're treating the person like they're a suspect, and it's just wrong. And so we talked more about that. And I know that was kind of a big theme in the documentary, that like not only are you victimized once, but then the justice system, it makes it almost worse, that you are like, wow, I thought you were going to help me and protect me. I think maybe I don't know if I think that's kind of surprising. Maybe people don't understand it until, like you said, Mandy, you lived it, and now you're kind of helping show an example of, okay, but you don't have to take it. You can kind of, especially with support and people around you. Would you say what else would you want to say to that end about because I know watching it was difficult, the fact that you as a mom, but you, Maddie, that you had to endure that again, which I know at points you had said was almost worse, right?
Yeah, I I struggle with saying it was worse or it was the same just because I literally thought I was going to die. Like,
Mm,
I knew that this county attorney wasn't going to kill me. I mean, I hoped. Thankfully, I was right there.
Well, he shouldn't. It'd be frowned
Yeah,
upon.
really frowned upon. But I, when I was being strangled, I really thought that I was going to die. So I would say it was just as bad having not had the support of the county attorney, an elected official in our county who is supposed to support victims of crime. And instead, I got met with the words immature sex, and that literally has no legal meaning anywhere in any book. Presented with statutes quoted by him saying that I had to verbally withdraw consent and that there was statute and case law on it. And we asked for that proof and never got it.
Because it still doesn't
Because
exist.
it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Not a thing. So part of me is like, is he excusing his own actions? Is like, I mean, if what you do is consensual and you like it, that's on you. That's fine. But I mean, you have to be able to be supportive of the people and actually dive into the evidence that has been collected before you tell a victim of a crime, no, this was immature sex. Because I had also learned that when he had told us that, he hadn't even read the SANE SART report, which I did do the night after I was raped. So pretty fresh evidence still. And he didn't even look at it, didn't even talk to the SANE SART nurse, who is an expert witness in court of law. So didn't have any of that information and just decided on his own, yeah, she's fine. This didn't happen to her.
yeah.
But yeah, it was having to sit in that office and having him like tell my parents leave. He only wanted to talk to me alone, which was weird to me. Like, yes, I was 19. I'm legally an adult at that point, but I was traumatized. Like, I needed my mom, I needed my dad. And so to not be able to have them in the room with me, I blacked out when he said we're not charging him with anything. Like, I still don't remember that conversation up until the point he said, do you have any questions? And I said, I need you to bring my parents in here and tell them what you just told me. And I remember my dad again was a police officer. He knew what was right and wrong in this instance. And after the county attorney told my parents that they're not charging anything, my dad, can I say it?
I don't know. Can we cuss?
Yeah. Oh, you can guess.
Said, you're the biggest pussy I've ever met, and slammed the door shut.
Mm,
So,
yeah.
which he's not wrong. So
That didn't set us on a very good first impression, probably.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
he didn't give us a good first impression either.
yeah, I was gonna say that. Yeah, I will say as a viewer watching, it was shocking to me too that I mean, this immature sex stuff, like you said, there's nothing really that's just made up. But like the fact that you actually had bruises on your neck, I was sitting there watching it going, but that's like, hello,
Right.
you're not going to at least, charge about that. Like, what are you talking about?
And with all the news stories that came out, there were comments, thousands of them, that on both good and bad, on all the posts. And one of them said the perpetrator was eventually charged with aggravated battery. And somebody commented on it. Don't know this person from the Man on the Moon, apparently, is the words we're using now. Said that if you could charge a sexual act with aggravated battery, how is there not a sexual act? Like, how are we not charging anything with a sex crime? This wasn't consensual if you can charge aggravated battery for the same instance.
Yeah.
She's got a point.
That's a good point. How
I
can
never
there
thought
be
about that. But
how can there be aggravated battery during something that feels good and right and consensual?
Yeah. Yeah.
there's a lot of fishy stuff.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Was it harder? And I don't know, because based on the documentary, it seemed like a small town. I don't know how small, but was it difficult in the sense that, I mean, I live in Scranton, we have about 80,000. So it's like you run into people, but it's not real small. Was it hard because did you feel like everyone knew your business and your story and maybe some were sticking up for other people? Like, was that difficult or did that really not play a part?
I would say it played a really good part for me
Okay.
because Well, yes, this did happen on Bethany College in my hometown. I grew up in Lindsborg, but he grew up in the next county over, but this is my town. So everybody was like, I mean, they saw pictures, they knew who it was. And so they were kind of on the lookout too, which I mean, I never got reports from people, oh, I saw him at the gas station, but you know, like I really felt like my town was looking out for me.
I did.
We,
Oh yeah.
you know,
Man, the mom always knows, right?
but, but no, it really felt like this little town really surrounded me with love. Um, very blessed to have grown up in this town and to have that kind of support to the point I've even convinced my husband to stay here. So
Well, I'm glad to hear that because that's a positive. Because sometimes you think in small towns, I guess it could go either way, like, oh, everybody knows my business. But in that instance, having the love and the support, that had to make a huge
Right.
difference. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think Lindsborg is just on a different level. It's such a sweet little town.
It's pretty great.
It's
Yeah.
really
Well,
good.
Justin, you convinced Justin, right?
Yeah. It's pretty great.
I want to ask you, Maddie, there was something else that really struck me that you said was powerful when you were going through all this too. I think, and I'm paraphrasing here, but you kind of said something like, at some point you didn't know who you were anymore, Maddie, beyond, this survivor of sexual assault and like getting the signatures, doing this whole process. And you were kind of ready to put that aside because you didn't know who you were anymore. Could you talk a little bit about that and how that felt or what you really were feeling then?
It felt like the process of collecting the signatures for the grand jury and then at this point filming a documentary, it felt like my whole, which I don't regret, by the way, love you, Hilary. Bless. It really felt like my whole life was enveloped around being a survivor of sexual assault with first rather than a human or a wife and a daughter. Like, and not that I ever felt like
Right.
I wasn't loved as in those roles, but it just really felt like every time we had a conversation, the documentary or the grand jury would come up to the point it was exhausting. And I was at the end of the documentary while we were wrapping up, I was in the process of applying to nursing school. So I'm also I was trying to look out for myself in that point. So I was like, I know that this next step in my education is going to be super difficult, which it was. Um, but I need to focus on that. Like that's my next step. I mean, we took the grand jury and the results of the grand jury, sorry about the dogs, as far as it could go as the statute would allow us in appeals because the grand jury wasn't convened totally correctly. That we took it as far as it could go. And even before that point, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so exhausted. Who am I? Who is this person? I need to figure that out again. Um, but what kept me going is there was another girl in this county who I had grown up kind of next to, not really good friends, but we knew of each other. It's Lindsborg, who experienced an assault, and the county attorney pretty much said the same words to her. Like, this isn't okay. I was like, we have to keep going. We're already on track. We're like, we already have a path. We're going to keep going. And so just trying to find the balance between life of a survivor who's trying to find more justice and being an individual became a little bit difficult for me. But I don't regret everything. I don't regret anything.
And I mean, this is all over a few years,
Yeah.
It's not like it was, oh, this was just a 6-month period. This was 3 years, probably.
3 years, and I mean, and the documentary alone was a year.
Right out of here.
Yeah.
That's show business for you.
Showgirl.
Life of a showgirl.
I can see that for you, Mandy, for sure. Yeah, you were given sass for sure. I guess, which is good though because you were fiery, which I love that you were going to do what needed to be done. Yeah,
I think at the end you could really see where I struggled with her wanting to just let it all go. And of course, I 1000% support that. But I ultimately felt like she was letting them shut her up. And that broke my heart. I was like, don't let them win.
And
You fought so hard.
And
you
I
know?
don't think it was necessarily letting people win. It was just to the point of exhaustion. And I don't think I knew how to articulate that at that time. So it really just came off like, I'm done. And then it pans over to mom and she's like, it's fine.
It's fine.
Now, it's interesting you brought that up. That was one of my notes, and I wanted to kind of delicately ask that because your face kind of says it all. Like you looked disappointed, like you wanted to keep. But I think I don't know if it was Justin or your dad. Like in one of the scenes, it's like she needs to move on. That kind of thing where it's like this is her decision, and we're going to respect it, and we're going to just go with her and move on.
Yep, that was Jason. Jason was like, hey, like, this is her a no. Like, this is how she finally gets to know. And I was like, oof, that's real hard to argue. You have to respect that. And then when she did find out about this other situation, she was like, okay, file the appeal. Send the letters in. Let's see what happens. And so we did go ahead and file the appeal. And we were essentially told, well, you hit the limit of the law. There's no room in this.
Literally the end of the road.
Right. There's no room in this law from the 1800s that allows for appeal. So there's nothing we can do.
Yeah.
And that, as frustrating as that is, it was a little satisfying because I'm like, literally nowhere else we could have gone with this. And it just, I don't want to sound like one of those people who thinks all systems are dirty, but this one here was really dirty. And there was a lot of sharing things that shouldn't have been shared going on here, and a lot of just dictating how things are going to go, regardless of if it's the right thing or not. And that is the piece that I think just kept me so driven and has probably just kind of kept me driven. Like, if you're in a position of power, know what you're talking about. And if you don't, ask for help. Let somebody guide you.
Yeah. And I think that happens like far more than it should. Absolutely. Yeah. Brushing things under the rug or just, oh, this is how it's going to go. Yeah, absolutely. And I wish I could say it. I don't believe that it does, but I do believe it does, unfortunately. Let me ask you though, let's talk about, so you moved on, and I want to come back to Mandy. I know you're doing work, but Maddie, you finished nursing school, I believe. So tell me about that and tell me about what you're doing. You're doing, I know you're a nurse working, I believe, with sexual assault survivors, but tell us about that.
So I have my RN BSN now, and I am not currently working with sexual assault survivors, but my plan is to get SANE Cert certified. But it feels like I've been a nurse for all of 2 seconds, which is true in the grand scheme of things. So I'm gonna give myself time to adjust and really delve deeper into more acute care, because I spent 8 years as a CNA CMA in long-term care in a nursing home, which I still do work at as a nurse, but I'm giving myself time to really adjust and learn the new ropes, because I'm working on a unit that's a lot of cardiac care, and it's also progressive care, which is not ICU status patients, but not stable patients. It's kind of like that middle ground. So there's a lot of learning. I go home with brain rot every day. I learn so much. But yeah, I'm honestly loving it. I love the change in the scenery for my new job at the hospital, but I also really miss I call them my olds, the nursing home.
Your old.
But my plan is to eventually get SANE Cert certified.
And now, what exactly? I know there's probably sexual assault in that word, but what exactly is SANE Cert?
SANE is sexual assault nurse examiner, and SART is sexual assault response team.
Okay.
So it's the nurse who will go in and she'll take pictures, or he will take pictures of top to bottom, front to back, and even inside.
The forensic exam.
Forensic examiner, and she'll write the report. And then that will go off and it gets pretty much sealed until it needs to be opened for a court case. Or any other legal reason that it needs to be opened. And
I think it's important to pause and just real quick put it into easy terms. It's a rape kit, where there's shelves and rooms full of unprocessed and,
yeah,
rape kits all across this nation. So that's essentially, I had to ask that night at my dinner table when she disclosed. I'm like, what is a SANE's heart? What are you talking about? You know, and rape kit is the word that we know.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
And we've seen that on SVU. I bring that up again only because I watched too many episodes. I'm sorry. But yeah, you hear that referenced. Yeah.
Yep. Right. Absolutely.
And a big reason why I want to do Sane Start Nursing is because I had an amazing Sane Start nurse myself. Her name was Kelly Pricky. Love her. But she somehow had me laughing and making jokes while she was literally taking pictures inside of my body. And I don't know, I just think there's a lot of really good, and I say power, but not like power position, just there's a lot of
It's empathy.
Yeah.
It's the power of empathy, right?
Yeah.
Of just being able to relate and to love.
When I was in that exam room, it was me and my best friend Alana. And we were making jokes, and I was like, I don't know how this lady is doing this, but she is magic. So
Yeah.
after the fact, and I mean, I went to therapy and I did EMDR therapy, which is eye movement desensitization and reprocessing therapy. It's pretty intense. But after all that, I was like, I think I want to do that. That lady was pretty cool. That was pretty powerful for her to be able to do that. And we actually met up when I did an interview for an award my mom very graciously nominated me for in secret, The Remarkable Women. And they surprised me, and I did my interview with Kelly there, and it was the first time I'd seen her since my exam, and it was an amazing reunion. I cried like a little baby. But I think she said something about how I never get to see what happens next for people that come in my door, but I get to see you and I get to follow your story, and it's been really powerful and uplifting for me because I feel like I'm doing something right. But at the same time, she goes, but I never get to touch base with them again because a lot of people probably don't want to revisit that. And I totally understand that. That is valid.
Yeah.
But so I think not only for myself, but like being reunited with each other, but on her perspective was also really uplifting for her and the work that she does.
Yeah. I'm glad you shared that because I was going to ask how your experience was, because I would imagine that role is so important. I mean, you could either if you have the wrong person or the person who's not having a good day or is whatever disengaged, how that could impact the person and what you walk away from that feeling like, so I'm glad you had a good experience.
And one thing that's very powerful about the exam itself is every time she's going to do something else, like swab under your fingernail, swab your mouth, take pictures of a different body part, it's, can I do this? Is this okay? Like without the survivor realizing it, you're getting that power back because you get to say no, and it will stop there. They will not continue with the exam, or they will not do that part of the exam, because that power is then given back to the victim.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. That's good to hear. I mean, every little thing I'm sure helps kind of regain your sense of, like you said, power again. And that's so key. So Mandy, tell me, you're continuing. I feel like you're on the path still of doing something to help, survivors. What are you doing now?
I don't know what I do or what I get myself into, but
she's doing a lot of really cool stuff.
I just completed my undergrad degree in psychology this past
Awesome.
week, and I am now working on my master's of social work degree. So
wonderful.
I'm doing all those things, and I would ultimately like to do trauma therapy for victims of sexual assault or really any type of trauma. Just be on the ground level, helping them find themselves again and believe in themselves and understand that nothing that happened had anything to do with them.
Yeah. Congratulations to both of you on what you're both achieving. And that's fantastic. I think that's wonderful. You mentioned, Maddie, the EMDR. I've had another guest on here who's like a regular guest of mine. We're friends. She lives in Pittsburgh, PA. I live in Scranton, PA, but she's a comedian. She does, public speaking. She does children's performances. She had been diagnosed as bipolar for the longest time. Now she's like, okay, that was a wrong diagnosis. She's learning that she's actually on the spectrum, autism, ADHD, but she has done that therapy, and she, believe me, she says it's wonders, has done wonders for
Yeah.
her. So I know.
I fully believe that I would not be where I am with one, again, not only my family support, but without EMDR therapy, because the person that was recommended to us in my area was a male, and I was not comfortable going to a male right after being assaulted. So I went to a therapist, and I went for a while and we just didn't really jive, and then went to another one and we didn't really jive. And then I said, let's try it. Let's try it. And it ended up being one of the best things I've ever done.
Yeah. And that's hard. That's like, I don't want to compare it to dating, but finding anything that's right for you, like finding the right therapist, is you have to keep searching until, because you want to be your most comfortable if you're going to get help.
You have to therapist shop if you want it to go well.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, as we start to wrap up, and I want to make sure you have an opportunity to say anything else you want to, but I do want to ask, what is like one of the biggest messages, and from both of you, Mandy, I'll ask as a mom, but Maddie as a survivor, that you want, I would say that you want to tell law enforcement, but then also to tell survivors, like two messages that you would want to share.
To law enforcement, I would just tell them to get training on being trauma informed and more updated training on how to investigate sexual assaults and rape, just for the benefit of your victim or your survivor. I use those words interchangeably for sure. But and don't, I mean, you don't have to say the words I believe you, but you can portray that with your body language, your tone of voice, and just in the words you use, but without even saying I believe you, because I mean that could be seen as too objective in court of law or whatever, how all that stuff works. But I think updating your training is so important, because I remember my dad going to trainings all the time, but trauma informed is pretty new relatively. So being able to get that training and not only go to the training, but dive into the training, because at the conferences we speak at, we see law enforcement officers all the time, and throughout sessions, they're on their phones, they're texting, they're not paying attention. Like, then why are you here? Because your job said you had to be. So not only diving into it, but listening and changing what you're doing. If you're doing it wrong, just like Justin admitted, it does take a lot to admit you're doing something wrong and you've done it wrong for years. And it's also hard to make that adjustment. And I recognize that, but we have to do better by our victims for sure. And when it comes to survivors, I would just say do what feels right for you, but my recommendation would definitely be therapy, and get a SANE start exam. As uncomfortable as they might be, if you don't want to press any charges now, you might want to in a couple months or in a couple years, and it's there. You have the evidence. It is collected. But therapy is my big one. It's always good to get a checkup from the neck up, even on a regular day, but when something bad happens, you need that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, honestly, I think we all need it, but especially, going through something like that, like that's, you can't carry that on your own, nor should you ever have to. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, Mandy, coming from a mom's perspective, what would you want to add to that, or say from you, what you went through as the mom?
I think my biggest piece is it would be, to parents out there, never create an environment where your children don't feel loved and safe, regardless of what situation they found themselves in, and they're afraid to come to you. I I was not doing any of that intentionally, but I somehow did it. And she came to us, and without even understanding what trauma informed was, or the positive way I was responding to what she had been through, I did not do any kind of victim blaming, victim shaming. If she could have circled the clock back, she likely wouldn't have done, A, B, C, D, E, or F, from that evening. Hindsight is always 2020. Like, love your kids through it. And I'm willing to bet that,
And with
we all know somebody who's experienced it.
Yeah.
And when it comes to your kids, tell them you believe them,
Mhm.
because
Mhm.
A, you should, and B, they're your child and you need to do what you can to support them to make sure that they're okay, that they come out of this on top, regardless of any legal battle. Because, I mean, quote unquote, we may have lost the legal battle. I say that because I did feel small wins along the way, but I still feel like I came out on top
Absolutely.
because of the support I had, of the therapy that I went to, and just how loved I felt by the people that surrounded me, and even the support from internationally was crazy.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's amazing.
I would say real quick that, from in the first 24 hours of us finding out and reporting, it felt as a parent that every single person we had to talk to and Maddie had to retell her story to would look specifically at Jason and I and just be stunned that we were there and that we were supporting her and then thank us. And I remember at the Victim Advocacy Center when we were getting the protection from abuse order, um, the advocate made a reference to, how blessed Maddie was to have our support. And I finally just looked at her and I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? Like, is there any other option? Who wouldn't be here supporting their daughter? And it was in that moment that I found out that most survivors don't have that support. And I still, like, if I could get a pedestal and pick a hill to die on, it would be about how we should love our children through the good and the bad and just help them.
Yeah.
With accountability, because like I thought she was coming to tell me that she got popped with a minor in possession of alcohol or something that night. I knew something was up, and she was about to be in all kinds of trouble for getting herself caught with some alcohol. So like there's accountability. Don't enable your kids. Hold them accountable. But when it's a big deal, love them through it.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to thank you both so much. I mean, I truly feel fortunate that you were willing to be on the podcast and share this, because I am all about my whole goal of this podcast every week is to give a platform and a voice for women to share. And you never know who's listening. You could be changing lives anywhere in the listeners, the audience. So I want to thank you so much. I want to thank you. I thank Hilary for bringing this into the documentary, and for you both for sharing your stories. I really do. I know you're making wonderful change, and you're inspiring and giving hope and helping empower so many people out there. So I want to thank you both for doing that.
Well, thank you for creating the space for people to do things like that.
Absolutely.
And thank you for having us on.
Absolutely. Is there anything else that you'd want to say? And it doesn't even have to be related to this, just something else that you'd want to share. Anything else at all?
Go listen to The Life of a Showgirl by Taylor Swift. It's amazing.
We've been fangirling for nearly a week now. It's exhausting.
Okay. It's so funny. I mentioned her on this week's episode. My guest was talking about, we were talking about budgeting and teaching young people the value, because some people don't, well, don't stress out your kids. And it was all about like what they need to understand, like, budgeting and what things cost. And I always use poor Taylor. I said, I like her, I respect her. It's just concert tickets are crazy.
Right?
I don't know how parents do it. It's crazy.
Agreed.
Yeah.
We had to skip this last
Yeah.
one. Couldn't pull that one off. But
Yeah.
we've been all the ones before.
That's life, I guess. But yeah, okay. So shout out to Taylor Swift. And not that, I mean, hey, she is from Pennsylvania. So, if I can get her to listen to this, that would change my life.
And got engaged in Kansas.
I was gonna say,
So
she lives here now.
yeah, she's a Kansas.
Can we share her?
Let's
Yeah.
do it.
That's good. Hilary, anything you would want to say in closing? I want to give you, and I want to give this opportunity to tell us a little bit about how people can get a viewing of the documentary.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having us on the podcast. It's really been an honor to be on the show, and also to go on this journey with Madison and Mandy and Jason and Justin and Julie, the detective and the prosecutor. And I learned so much from them, and I really learned so much about the fact that the crime of sexual assault isn't a sex crime. It's a crime of power and control, and the way that you get that power and control back for survivors is by listening to them, by believing them, but also by trauma-informed practices where you really look at how people who have been victims of violent crimes process stories and remember things. So instead of treating them like suspects, you allow them the time and space and the safety to be able to share what happened to them so that you can get justice, because so few victims of sexual assault actually even bring their cases to the police, much less have a prosecutor file charges, and then an even tinier fraction of that actually result in convictions. So there's a lot that needs to change. But over the course of that, it was great to form this relationship with Madison and Mandy and Justin and Julie and Jason. And it was a gift. And I loved spending time with them in Lindsborg, and hope to keep spending time with them. And for viewers who want to see the film, we have a distributor, Women Make Movies, and they can contact Women Make Movies and set up a screening in their town, whether it's your community organization or your university or college or high school or church or any book club, you name it. The screening cost is very nominal. So we want to get this seen by as many people as possible, especially young people in high school before they head off to college, or for people who are starting their first year of college. I think there's so much in Madison's story that speaks to what any young person could experience on campus. And so we'd like to get share Madison's story as much as possible.
Thank you so much for that, Hilary. And in fact, I don't want to give anything away, but Hilary and I have been kind of communicating. I would like to bring it here to Scranton. So that's on my mind, and I'll be working on that maybe for the springtime, especially. April is Sexual Assault Awareness Month. So I would love to bring it here to Scranton. So
Awesome.
once again, thank you, ladies, so much for joining me. And for listeners, be sure to tune in, not just to this episode. Obviously, if you're hearing me, then you already have tuned in. But next week, you'll hear kind of a part 2, in the sense that I have Hilary being joined by Justin Boardman and Julie German. And you'll hear a little bit more about the legal side of things, and how law enforcement and what they're doing. Those two folks are doing great things, working with law enforcement and trying to get them to better understand the trauma-informed side of things, and just to reframe the way that they're approaching this. So it's another great conversation. Thank you for listening. If you would like to be on the podcast, or if you know a woman that you're like, hey, she's got a great story that she should be on there, please feel free to reach out to me, Janine Luby, LinkedIn, Facebook, Funny Wine Girl Janine on Facebook and Instagram. And if you'd like to support conversations like this, because they are important, and you're interested in sponsorship packages, reach out to me, because as I say, it's cheaper than buying yourself a latte every day outside the home. It's that affordable. And I guess that's all that I would say. And as I say every week, I appreciate you from the bottom of my heart and the bottom of my wine glass.
Thank you.